Jamie. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and to do so, I'm going to say good evening, bon soiree, and kwe. This meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq. We gather with respect, cooperation, and coexistence as set forth in the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1760 and 61. Before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping items here. We've noticed that people in the back of the chamber cannot hear us, so if everybody can make sure they have this pulled up close so they can, when they're speaking, that would be terrific. And remember to turn off your cell phones. So before we begin tonight's business, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that this is our very first Heritage Advisory Committee meeting with our two new council members, Renee Babineau and myself. And I thought it might be a good time to have each member of this committee introduce themselves. They volunteer because of their strong interest and love for the town of Lunenburg in the history and its building. So I'm going to pass it around and have everybody give themselves a brief introduction.
Okay, I'll go first. So I'm Renee Babineau. I'm newly elected councillor to the town of Lunenburg. This is my first time serving on council. And obviously also my first Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. Very excited to be here. So thank you.
I'm Oliver Osmond. I'm one of the representatives of the Lunenburg Heritage Society. Until 3 weeks ago, I was the treasurer for 14 and a half years. And I'm now much relieved to have found a successor. And I've been a member of this committee for quite a time.
Good evening and welcome to our new councillors on the Heritage Advisory Committee. My name's Nathalie Irving. I am also a representative of the Lunenburg Heritage Society. And I am the chair of the Lunenburg Heritage Society as well. And I haven't been able to get rid of my position or pass it along. Yes, I'm involved because of my love of heritage, which preceded moving to Lunenburg, but was one of the reasons why I've moved to Lunenburg. And I've been on the HAC since I think 2017.
Thank you, Allison. Excuse me, recovering from a cold. My name is Fawn Creaser. I am a community representative on the committee, so I'm just starting my second term into this and loving it. And yeah, as Allison said, it is that love of Lunenburg, but also I'm a renovator, so I've enjoyed working with the town. So I have that sense of working with the planning advisory or planning committee department with the town, which has always worked out really well. So I sort of bring that to the table too. Thanks.
And then thank you very much for being so brief. I know that we have some heavy stuff to look at. I'd like staff to also introduce themselves.
I guess I'll go if I have to. My name is Trevor Hume. I'm Planner Development Officer with the town, and tonight I'm wearing the AV operator hat. Happy to be here.
My name is Laura Legraley, and I am the Heritage Officer with the town of Lunenburg. And yeah, I've been with the town only for 6 months so far. So this is our first biggie, and it's exciting. All right.
Good evening. My name is Mark Kiley, and I'm also with the town under the, my current role is the interim director of community development, of which Heritage fits under that umbrella. So very happy to be here and looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And before we proceed to the agenda, or before we approve tonight's agenda, I have one addition I'd like to propose, which is the appointment of the committee chair, and I'm going to ask Renee to do that for me?
Sure. So I'd like to move that the committee appoint Councillors Strawn and Councillors Babineau as co-chairs with chairing duties alternating for each meeting.
And just as by way of information, tonight's presentation is not a public participation event. However, it depends on the recommendation of this committee, whether it moves forward to a public hearing after tonight or at another date, at a regular council meeting. So with that, I'd like, okay, oh, sorry, I forgot to move the motion. Okay, so you moved the motion. Any seconders? Seconded by Fawn. That's it?
Yep.
Okay, so you heard what I jumped ahead with.
The agenda is amended.
So the agenda is amended. Can you tell I've been practicing for about 5 minutes? Tonight we have a presentation on Lot 2 Pelham Street and Lot 3 Montague Street, which requires a certificate of appropriateness before proceeding. Isaac Frisia, and I hope I'm getting that name correctly.
Chair, do we have to approve the minutes of our last? Okay.
Back up a little bit. I've got too many papers. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Could I make an amendment to the
Okay.
minutes, please? I noticed there, the minutes that as received in our agenda package, that our last meeting is noted as September 9th, 2023.
Oh, yeah.
And down in the approval of the agenda, it's also 2023. So if those could be adjusted to 2024. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections? Oliver, seconded by Renee. Now for the substantive part. Tonight we have a presentation again on Lot 2 Pelham Street and Lot 3 Montague Street, which requires a certificate of appropriateness before proceeding. And I hope I get this name right. Isaac Frisia, is that correct? Yes. Is going to present on behalf of Michaela and Sweet Apple the application. Okay. We have last minute change. Brian McKay Lyons will be presenting.
Right on. That's loud. I'm Jacob Fenchek. I'm a project manager with Armor Group. I just wanted to step up here before Brian gives his presentation just to put a name to the face and also just get up here and give some background on Armor Group. Armor Group is one of the largest historic property owners in Halifax. Such as Barrington Place, Founders Square, historic properties, among other developments. Our philosophy is deeply rooted in understanding and appreciating local history, architecture, and sense of place. We've made it a cornerstone of our work, and we're proud to bring that experience to Lunenburg and to be a part of this community. To realize our vision, we put together a great team of local experts, MLSA, and also Tilia Builders, who is a custom home builder here on the South Shore. We really wanted to keep those roots on this project. We have looked around the province for opportunities, and we've chosen this one in Lunenburg. We believe in Lunenburg's future, and we want to be a part of this community. We understand the responsibility and believe our design encompasses Lunenburg's historic architectural features and built form. So thanks again for having us. I'll be here to answer any questions during this meeting and after as well. I'll be reachable for that as well. So thank you, Chair. Pass it over to Brian now with MLSA.
Hello. So I'm Brian McKay Lyons, founder of McKay Lyons Sweet Apple Architects, and I guess local architect offices on Montague Street, and Halifax and a few places in the US. So I would like to just take you through the project very, very quickly. to give you the Cook's tour of it. This is a property I've had a long-standing interest in, owned the property for a while. You know, been looking at this property since I brought my Harvard students here 30 years ago. It's great to be at the point where we're talking about a possible development here. So there are 4 lots. 3 of them are part of the this meeting. The one this is called the oldest house in town, the Romkey House. It's called the oldest house in town, I think mostly because there was an Acadian house there previous. And so it's a provincially registered foundation. So it's, I think, technically the oldest that way. There are 3, there are. Oh, wow, thanks, Trevor. Yeah. Oh, wow. All right. You good? Okay. So there's a lot on Pelham Street next to it. It's called Lot 2 Pelham. We're proposing 2 units to go in the historic building and not to change its architecture. That's why it's not being discussed tonight. The building next door is an infill building on an empty lot, and it would have, we're proposing 4 2-bedroom units and 2 1-bedroom units in that new infill structure here. The typical original Lunenburg plan showed 40 by 60 foot lots. So this would have been 4 lots once. So we're treating this larger lot as 2 lots, recreating a property line and putting 2 buildings. So it's got 4 buildings like it was intended to in the original town plan. On the Montague side, we have 4 3-bedrooms, 6 2-bedrooms, 3 1-bedrooms, 1 studio, and 2 commercial spaces on Montague Street. So altogether, there are 24 units of one kind or another. There's an elevator in the building, and a number of the units are barrier-free units for accessibility. Okay, now if we can go to the next one, Trevor. So here's the Romkey house that you're all familiar with. It's a gambrel roof building, as are a number of other historic buildings in town, like this one right here. So we're proposing that roof language for the whole project. Next one, please. This is our offices on Montague Street. And so you can see this was an infill project that we did maybe 5 years ago now, restoring an existing building and adding a new one that looks like it might have been there. And that received all the Heritage Awards in Canada, from the municipal to the federal one. So that's where we operate out of. And you'll see that that's been a model for the new development that we're proposing. Next one, please. This is a 1820 schoolhouse that we actually own and restored, just to demonstrate our interest in an understanding of Nova Scotia heritage architecture. Next one. That's a 1750s Cape Cod house that our daughter lives in now. And we've restored that as well. So we have a kind of, part of our practice is involved in restoring historic buildings and learning from them to make contemporary buildings. Next one. So the material palette that we're talking about is the same as this. Cedar shingles, eastern cedar shingles, wood windows, and so on. Next one. Right across the street from the Romkey house is this wonderful 2.5-story Georgian house. And that is a scaling precedent for what we're proposing as well. It's a wonderful building next door. On the other side of Montague from the site, there's this gambrel building, and you know Montague has a lot of gambrel buildings. This one's a very large one, but a 4-level one. And these are all character defining buildings according to the the town. Next one. So on Montague Street, here's another one with the trompe-l'oeil stone, 4 levels, gambrel. Next one. Lunenburg School of the Arts, really demonstrating the kind of, Montague Street has a lot of little bit funky and asymmetrical facades on it, which makes it interesting. Next one. Right across the road from our office, you see, of course, Adams and Knickel building. And all the buildings in the area have these shop fronts, these 6-pane windows on Montague Street in particular. Next one. So this is the project we're proposing. Here's the Romke House. Here's the Georgian House across the street from it. This is a 3.5-story gambrel. All the new buildings would have gray standing seam metal roofs, which is part of what the development regulations and the heritage bylaw proposes people should do. This is 4-inch to the weather cedar, eastern cedar shingles. All 4-inch wood trim around all the windows. Shop front windows like the ones that I pointed out, the precedents, the 6-pane sashes. Corner boards, 10-inch corner boards, water table board. Lunenburg has great side streets because of these funky little windows that bite into the water table board as you go up. Because Lunenburg was designed on a flat sheet of paper in London. And when they got here, they found there was a hill. And so that became the interesting thing. All the doors that we're proposing, the parking doors here, we have 10 underground parking spaces that we're proposing. There's no parking requirement, but it's important to provide it if you can. So that's a kind of incognito way to get in if you're in a car. All of these doors are plank wood doors. And that's kind of the kind of waterfront language that we're keeping going. What else can I tell you? This colors change, but the shingles will probably stay natural because it's a huge maintenance cost to be painting them all the time. But for these drawings, we've picked the sort of Lunenburg Dory color. So I want to just read you a quote. Last thing. There's a Mexican poet, he's a Nobel laureate. He wrote about tradition and modernity in a way that is very inspiring, I think. He says, when taken alone, tradition stagnates and modernity vaporizes. When taken together, modernity breathes life into tradition, and tradition responds by providing depth and gravity. So that's our view of that relationship between tradition and modernity. Let's look at some more of these drawings, these views. Here's the Pelham Street view. And you can see that this 2.5-story Georgian house that we're proposing is the exact same height proportion as this one, and the exact same eave height as the building, the 2.5-story Georgian 2 doors down. Next one, please. This one shows you that the building drops down the hill toward the harbor, the buildings, and create a courtyard between the Pelham and the Montague buildings in the back. So the residents would share a little backyard courtyard. Next one. So that's the 2.5-story Georgian infill one using Scottish dormers like Romke House. And here are the plank doors I was talking about. 2/2 windows with wood trim, double hung windows. Next. Look, quite a few people in this drawing. Maybe a little too many. Yeah, tourist season, yeah. So this is a property right in the center of the UNESCO Heritage District, and we think it's important to use all of these historic materials and precedents to do it in forms and fill in what is a kind of a blank or a blind spot that was always meant to be built on. You know, the original town plan proposed that there would be buildings here. Is there another one? Oh, yeah. Okay, so there you see the whole, you can see all four of the buildings, including the existing one, are gambrel roof. And many of the gambrels in town are on Montague Street. From a point of view of height, the development uses the 34-foot height, average height maximum, and is under it everywhere. So it meets the height requirements of the development guidelines and the heritage. Another aerial. Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to ask Laura, who you all met earlier to provide her brief remarks about it from her office as Heritage Officer.
All right. Thank you, Allison. What I have to say is maybe not as exciting because there's no pictures, but I'll try to get through this without taking too much time. So what we just saw from Brian, Lot 2 Pelham and Lot 3 Montague are located within the Heritage Conservation District and are therefore regulated pursuant to the HCD plan and bylaw. They're also located within the UNESCO World Heritage Site and the Old Town National Historic Site, both of which are considered within our Heritage Conservation Plan and bylaw. So that's something to keep in mind. So for discussion, I'll start with Lot 2 Pelham. The proposal for Lot 2 Pelham Street features a 2.5-story gambrel style residential structure. The block of Pelham Street is primarily residential in style with buildings varying from 1.5 to 2.5 stories. So staff believe that the proposed building demonstrates a thoughtful response to the surrounding context in terms of proportions, size, and massing, blending seamlessly into the existing streetscape. It incorporates several traditional design elements, as Brian highlighted, of this section of Pelham Street, such as the Scottish dormers found on the neighboring buildings. This form of gambrel roof also echoes the adjacent building at 80 Pelham. The use of vertical wood plank doors not only draws inspiration from the traditional waterfront heritage buildings of the area, but also offers a contemporary take that enhances the overall streetscape. The building's urban form aligns with the defining characteristics of Old Town Lunenburg as recognized in its UNESCO designation, with little to no setbacks, separation between buildings, and the orientation to the street grid. The materiality honors the Lunenburg vernacular, featuring wooden shingles and wide corner boards. It integrates modern materials such as a metal roof, which is permitted under the HCD bylaw, and non-combustible cladding on facades adjacent to neighboring buildings to aid in the preservation of our built heritage. So in accordance to policy 4.6 of the HCD plan, the proposed design is sympathetic to nearby heritage buildings. This proposed building does not fall within the view plane of the views highlighted on map 6 of the HCD plan and bylaw, nor does it detract from the views of adjacent heritage buildings. It respects the design guidelines intended to maintain the architectural integrity of Old Town while allowing for cohesive contemporary development. Now looking at Lot 3 Montague Street. So Lot 3 Montague Street incorporates a 2 3.5-story gambrel style commercial structures with separate facades. This block of Montague Street is made up of a mix of residential and commercial style buildings varying from 1.5 to 3.5 stories. The proposal for Lot 3 Montague Street echoes multiple buildings along Montague Street with a gambrel roof style, a traditional style of both commercial and waterfront buildings in Old Town. The design features two distinct masses connected by a setback hallway with a separate height and roof, effectively achieving the intent of the bylaw to prevent visually dominant structures. This approach honors the grid pattern that Brian also mentioned that underpins our designation as a UNESCO World Heritage Site with lot sizes of 40 by 60, ensuring that the building fits harmoniously within the existing streetscape without blocking views of adjacent buildings. By adhering to these principles, the design is aligned with the distinct urban form of the HCD, maintaining the historical character of the HCD as well. As a result, the design is fully in keeping with the intent of the design guidelines, which emphasize the importance of avoiding large, overpowering, dominant structures in favor for a more cohesive and varied streetscape. Each facade incorporates key elements of traditional storefront design. This is also something that Brian mentioned, but each of the storefronts includes 6-pane display windows with a strong cornice over the storefront, baseboard panels found elsewhere in the area, establishing visual continuity in the neighborhood with the neighboring building at 90 Montague, reinforcing the historical architectural context. These storefronts divide the principal facades to break up the facade into smaller units and reduce the scale of the building. The solid wood planks, the solid wood plank shutters draw inspiration to the traditional waterfront heritage buildings in the area while offering a modern interpretation that contributes positively to the overall streetscape. Additionally, each facade demonstrates vertical emphasis with vertically proportioned windows, corner boards, and aligned architectural elements that enhance the building's connection to the surrounding structures. The wooden shingles, doors, and windows reflect the materials found on adjacent buildings, further integrating the buildings into the established vernacular fabric of Montague Street. Again, in line with 4.6, to satisfy council for this application, the proposed design maintains the required proportions, scale, and materials, ensuring that the buildings harmonize with their architectural context, preserving the area's historic character while allowing for creative adaptations of traditional styles. The proposed building does not fall within the viewplane of views highlighted on map 6 of the HCD plan and bylaw, nor does it detract from views of adjacent buildings. Woo, okay. Therefore, both developments are fully compliant with the HCD plan and bylaw, ensuring historic integrity of the district is preserved. For the above reasons, staff has made a positive recommendation for the development of these two buildings on Lot 2 Pelham Street and Lot 3 Montague. That's it. Thank you.
So I will open it up to the committee for questions of Brian and Laura.
I should begin by making it quite clear that Brian and I have known each other for what, 35, 40 years, something like that. We both are significant landowners in Upper Kingsburg, and I'm very familiar with both the outside and the inside of a number of the buildings Brian has designed. I don't think that prejudices my view, but I felt it right to declare it. First of all, I would say I have great enthusiasm for the Montague Street buildings. It seems to me that they fit, as Brian's already explained, extremely well into both the varied nature of the Montague Street commercial buildings, but also reflect, as he says, a number of distinctive features, and especially the gambrel roof. The Pelham Street building, I think, is just a little bit more problematic. I'm quite aware that having the height that it does or is proposed is within the heritage regulations, But I'm also aware, and I went and looked carefully again at that bit of Pelham Street earlier today, that it will inevitably rather dwarf the so-called old house and the house the other side of it. On balance, it seems to me we need to be prepared to live with that. And yes, there are a number of other buildings on that part of Pelham Street. I think all of the ones across the road, and has already been pointed out, going sort of what I would call away from the centre of town along Pelham Street. The next but one house is a similar height. So on balance, I think we accept that, but with just the tiniest bit of unease. I think that's what I would say. And overall, as an attempt to build new buildings, which are clearly new buildings, but are very much using the traditions of old Lunenburg old-time architecture, I think these look to be, highly successful designs. So on balance, I'm happy, but with that one bit of reservation.
Thank you, Oliver. Anybody else?
One of the things that I was reminded of for being on this committee was part of the comprehensive community plan that speaks to heritage. And I find that the design and the features and the scale and all things heritage, as everyone is saying, is suitable for that location. But I really feel that it embodies a certain definition one of the goals that is within the plan. And that is that we be a town that continues to evolve as a living heritage site and recognizes a holistic view of its diverse history. And for me, the living heritage part of that is sort of the word that Brian uses, the modernity of it, which brings in, because we live differently now than those in the past lived. So things like even view, which were not really much or not really part, because a lot of people went to sea and they thought, okay, we can see the sea, we don't need to see it when we're home. But this does. And natural light, which we all know now helps us live be healthier in our well-being. And so there's lots of that, and I like that. And I like that it's contained within all the features that we look for within Old Town Lunenburg. So it's not easy to do that. I know you've been doing this a long time, but it's still not easy to do that. And I think that this embodies that definition of us being a living heritage site. And so, yeah, I'm usually the person with 50 questions, and I actually don't have one. So well done.
Anybody else? Okay.
Overall, I think the designs are nice. I'm not as good with words as Fawn is. My one bit that I was kind of wondering about is the windows, the second and third level windows on Montague Street. They are 2x2s, but they are very tight next to each other and above each other. And taking off the design from the B2 Lofts building or your office buildings, you carry that same design or a similar design there, but that is another district. I believe it's waterfront, the working waterfront development area there. And I have no issues with the 3/3 and on the first level, but I find those two sets of floor to ceiling windows to be very non-residential. The one down the street has a smaller window underneath the larger window, and that gives it a different feel. But that's just an observation that it just has more of a commercial, I guess it is a commercial building, so that changes. But so just curious about that. Yeah.
Anybody else besides me? I have one question, and it's for Brian. The gambrel, it seems to be getting overused, but I'm wondering what its relationship is to Lunenburg. Was that the sail loft? And I'm also, Laura wants to say a word.
Sorry, I'm going to jump back to what you were saying about the proportion of the windows. And I don't want to close the discussion on the gambrel style if you want to go back to that. But I do want to just say that the application is within our bylaw, stating that within commercial buildings, window to wall ratio can be 60 to 75%. So it is more than like a residential building would be. So.
I'm informed that you have to come to the mic for everybody to hear you. But my second question was, my second comment was that the large scale gambrel at the bottom, interestingly, was the home of W.C. Smith's business, which was obviously one of the main holds of the town of Lunenburg over the years. And I really appreciate the hearing about the connection of all of the history. The history geek, and Laura will tell you, I kind of would like to see these applications come forward with that history of the area, for me to see it in a different way than most people do. But really thank you I really appreciate you pointing out the Acadian foundation there, because we found that in several houses, including one of my own in the town of Lunenburg, and it is often overlooked that we are a town that was occupied by previous cultures. So that's all I wanted to say. So if there's nothing left, can I look to someone to look at the draft motion and see whether we move with it onto a public hearing at the council stage? Well, I'll read it.
I'm just wondering if maybe that ding was Philip is attending online. So he might have something to say. No, he's okay. Okay. Thank you, Trevor.
I'll read the what I have in front of me, and it's moved and seconded to recommend that council approve the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of the commercial development located on Lot 3, Montague Street, and the residential structure located on Lot 2, Pelham Street. So if someone wants to either work with that, come up with something new or whatever, I'm happy to have that discussion. Oliver,
I'd be willing to move that.
and do we have a seconder? Fawn.
I'll second.
next meeting is to be determined, and I'll ask for an adjournment. Does anybody want to adjourn the meeting? On, seconded by. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and please try to stay warm.